Week 6 of the fantasy football season is right around the corner, and in today's video, I'm going to help you guys navigate your bye weeks, navigate players that are injured, and just navigate maybe your bench not being as good as you would want it to be. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down 13 players that you need to add to your team prior to week number 6 of the 2025 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, we'll be going in depth through each of those players, and by the end of today's video, you will know exactly why you want them on your team. Before we got into things though, I would like to ask that if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 6 waiver wire ads for the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with my first waiver wire ad of the week, and that is going to be Michael Carter, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the Indianapolis Colts this week in Indianapolis, currently rostered in 59% of leagues over on Sleeper. So for some reason in your league, Michael Carter is still available. If you're in an 8 or a 10 team league, you definitely want to add him onto your team. Now, this is not a player that I would blow my fab wad for, and what I mean by that is I wouldn't blow necessarily my number one waiver wire priority for him. I would not necessarily put a bunch of fab dollars up to get Michael Carter because of the fact that we know once Trey Benson ends up coming back from injury in the next 3 to 5 weeks, right? He had his arthroscopic surgery on his meniscus. He's expected to be back in the next 3 to 6 weeks. Once he does return, then he will be back to being the lead back on the team. But as of right now, Michael Carter is that guy. He played 58% of the snaps. Amari DeMarcado played 28%, and Bam Knight played 16%. And based on the fact that DeMarcado had just 3 rushes for 81 yards and ultimately kind of just lost them the game by fumbling the football, I think that the ball is going to continue to get force-fed the way of Michael Carter, who had 18 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown as the RB8 last week in PPR versus the Titans in a game that they lost 21-22. Now, the finishes for the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks are all going to be skewed by the fact that Monday Night Football has not happened yet. So after Monday Night Football takes place tonight, some of these players will move down the rankings for the week. So 18 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown, like I said, as well as 5 receptions on 5 targets for 22 yards. Again, DeMarcado only had 3 rushes for 81 yards and a fumble. Bam Knight had 4 rushes for 11 yards and a touchdown. So this is very clearly Michael Carter's backfield until Trey Benson returns. So until Trey Benson is back, Michael Carter can be started in your lineup as a running back too. I don't expect him up against the Indianapolis Colts to blow their back out and for him to finish as a top 10-ish running back, but I definitely think the upside is there. The guy definitely is talented enough, even though the Arizona Cardinals offense has been kind of meh, to say the very least. Next up, we got Darren Waller, tight end of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the LA Chargers this week at home in Miami. 68% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, something to discuss real quick is that some of these guys that we talk about in today's video are going to be much more widely owned earlier on in the videos. We get deeper and deeper into the waiver wire ads, the more widely available they will be. So Darren Waller is another guy that if you're in a 10-team league, an 8-team league, he may be available. You might be like, Nick, shouldn't you have talked about Darren Waller last week as a waiver wire ad? Well, I did, so hopefully you scooped him up last week. Tight end 5 last week in PPR up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. They lose that game 24-27. I could sit here for 5 to 10 minutes crashing out about how much of a disaster my favorite team is, the Miami Dolphins. I could talk about how much of a disgrace Chris Greer is to this franchise. I could talk about how this defense couldn't stop Rico Dowdle at all. I could talk about all these other things. Or to wait till later in the week to talk about this, because this is a waiver wire ad trying to give you guys the quick hitters, right? So Darren Waller looked fantastic. Menu week, 5 receptions on 5 targets for 78 yards and a touchdown. He saw a 30% jump in snaps compared to week number 4, indicating that the team strongly believes in him, even though he just recently returned from his retirement. The Dolphins snaps at the tight end position, 58% for Darren Waller, Julian Hill 53%, and Tanner Conner 20%. In terms of targets, Darren Waller had the 3rd most targets on the team, tied with Julian Hill with 5, Waddle had 9, and Devon Achane had 7. Darren Waller was not very much involved in the second half because for some reason, Mike McDaniel is too much of a dumbass to actually make some adjustments, and instead, in the second half, after we were putting up belt to ass of the Carolina Panthers in the first half, he decides to run a million screens. There's a million 3 and outs. Get the ball to Darren Waller. We saw how good Jonnu Smith was in this offense last season, and if they want to involve Darren Waller as much as they should without Tyreek Hill, then Darren Waller could potentially be a league winner. Next up, we got, you might just get hit with the Rico Dowdle, running back of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Dallas Cowboys, 71% rostered over on Sleeper. If Chuba Hubbard is out, Rico Dowdle needs to be inserted into your lineup instantly. He could legitimately be a top 12 running back again up against the Dallas Cowboys. Last week, up against the sorry Dolphins defense that I say every week, they could not stop me or you if you were the lead running back. They couldn't stop Rico Dowdle as he was the RB1 on the week in PPR, winning the game 27-24, 23 rushes for 206 yards and a touchdown. 206 yards and a touchdown. This motherfucker was averaging like 10 yards a carry. 10 yards a carry, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 28 yards in a revenge game now this week up against the Dallas Cowboys. In terms of snap count, Rico played 67%. Trevor Etienne, Travis's brother, played 20%. Wiki, DJ Dallas played 17%. And all non-Rico Dowdle running backs combined for 5 total touches. This is his backfield until Chuba Hubbard does return. Chuba is dealing with a calf injury, and calf strains take some time and have a high re-injury rate, according to Dr. Jesse Morris on Twitter. Chuba missing this week wouldn't be a surprise to me at all. Now, I wouldn't put all my eggs into that basket like it was fucking Easter and declare to you guys that Chuba Hubbard's definitely missing, because that would be foolish to say, right? He is now considered day-to-day, which is positive news, right? So don't unload the fab clip on Chuba Hubbard, but if you could pick him up, pick him up. If we do not see Chuba Hubbard in this game, then Rico Dowdle is going to go absolutely banana lands again. And I think Rico Dowdle may have carved out more of a role in this offense. Now, I still think Chuba's the guy when he is healthy, but I think Rico Dowdle will be receiving more touches going forward compared to what we saw earlier on in the season. Next up, we move to Mason Taylor, tight end of the New York Jumbo Jets, going up against the Denver Broncos this week at home in MetLife, 20% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, the New York Jets are hilarious this season, at least through the last 2 games with Justin Fields. Up against the Dolphins, they're not able to do anything in the first half. Then in the second half, they're the garbage time kings. Shout out to Blake Bortles and Mason Taylor, Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields all end up having a good game. Then last week, up against the Dallas Cowboys, it's the exact same thing. They are getting absolutely butt-fucked by the Dallas Cowboys, and by the end of the game, Garrett Wilson looks good, Mason Taylor looks good, and so does Justin Fields. So while it may be a little bit scary, you just kind of have to bite the pillow early on through the first 3 quarters, because you know in the 4th quarter, they are going to come alive. Shout out to Frankenstein. Tight end 7 last week in PPR for Mason Taylor versus the Dallas Cowboys. They lose that game 22-37. 9 receptions on 12 targets for 67 yards. His targets have increased every single week since the start of the season, and he has 6+ targets in 3 straight games with back-to-back games of over 11 PPR points. Mason Taylor is the clear tight end 1 on this squad, playing 80+% of the snaps in back-to-back showings, and is the clear number 2 target on this team, even though he technically was the number 1 target on the team last week with 12 targets compared to Garrett Wilson's 10. Mason Taylor is also coming off of a high ankle sprain from the summer, so he's really just now getting started. Those first couple weeks of the season, he's just dipping his toes in. Now he's fully ingrained as the tight end 1 on this team, and he has looked very, very good. At number 5, we got Hassan, running back of the LA Superchargers, going up against the Miami Dolphins in Miami. 2% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, the LA Chargers offensive line is compromised. Omarion Hampton is dealing with a ankle injury and will undergo more testing to determine the severity of this injury. According to Ian Rappaport, he was also seen in a walking boot after the game, which is never a good sign, but according to Jeff Mueller, while it's not a good sign, not a good visual, according to Jeff Mueller, walking boots can often be for precautionary use to minimize load bearing and accelerate initial healing, and doesn't dictate severity. So, while as a casual, right, as someone that's not a fucking doctor, when you see that boot, you're getting real nervous. It could mean that he will be good to go in this game. If Omarion Hampton plays up against the Dolphins defense, I don't give a fuck who's on the offensive line. I mean, one of these guys, if it's going to be Haskins or VIDAL, one of them are going to run a train on the Dolphins defense. Again, the Dolphins defense cannot stop the run. Week 5 versus the Commanders, 5 rushes for 13 yards, 1 reception on 1 target for 2 yards. Chargers running back utilization in 2 drives without Hampton at the end of the game after he got hurt. VIDAL, 60% of the snaps, 50% of the attempts, and 45% of the routes. Hassan, 40% of the snaps, 50% of the attempts, and 39% of the routes. That was a game, though, where they were down. They're up against the Dolphins, which would be my expectation, because as a Dolphins fan, I don't expect anything good to happen. Then Hassan will be getting more work. If they are down, if the Dolphins somehow turn into the 2023 version of themselves without Tyreek Hill magically, then you will see more Kamani Vidal. So they're both rosterable. They're both addable. I don't love either of these guys, because it might just be a true 50-50 split share. But if you're without Hampton, you definitely want to add him. If your running back core is diminished, maybe you're dealing with bye weeks, maybe you're dealing with a million injuries, maybe your running back core just isn't that good in general, then playing Hassan or Kamani Vidal isn't all that crazy. If I had to pick one, it would be Haskins. That's why we're talking about him here. But Kamani Vidal also would be rosterable. Next up, we got Theo Johnson, tight end of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday Night Football. 10% rostered over on Sleeper. Before we talk about Theo Johnson and the rest of the players in today's waiver wire ad video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 of the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. All of this is for new users. If you don't know how the pick'em works on Underdog, it's incredibly simple. You have to play at least 2 players. They're higher or they're lower. If both the picks hit, then you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, the payout will be higher, but all of the picks have to hit. So make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Theo Johnson was the tight end 3 last week in PPR at the New Orleans Saints. They lose that game 14-26 after riding high up against the Chargers in the prior week. 6 receptions on 7 targets for 33 yards and not 1, but 2 fucking touchdowns for Theo Johnson. Back-to-back games with 5+ targets and at least 1 touchdown with 10+ PPR points. Now, much more of a touchdown-dependent player, as the receiving yards haven't been very fruitful for him, which is why I have Darren Waller and Mason Taylor ranked higher on the list, because I don't think that with Waller getting more usage, he necessarily has to score a touchdown to be fine. Same thing has been the case with Mason Taylor. But, and there's a big but, shout out to Shakira, if he continues to become a favorite target of Dart in this offense, I am going to be taking my chances at starting him weekly, because he could find the end zone game in and game out. Next up, we move to Romeo Doubs, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week, 62% rostered on Sleeper. The only reason why I included him in today's video is, for one, the matchup is incredible, and because they were on bye last week, so a lot of people might had to panic and drop him in order to just have someone to play on their team. So if someone in your league did drop Romeo Doubs, or if they hadn't picked him up previously, you definitely want him on your team. Week 3 up against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World. That game was a tie 40-40. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 58 yards and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. Do I think he's ever going to score 3 touchdowns again this season? Fuck no, baby. But with how good the Packers offense can be in certain games, I wouldn't be shocked if he scored 2 touchdowns in any given game, and Romeo Doubs does appear to be the wide receiver 1 on this team. Now, Christian Watson is set to return from the PUP and is practicing on Monday. Doesn't guarantee he plays on Sunday, but he could. At that point, if that is what happens, then I'm a little bit more worried about Doubs, but ultimately, when you're going up against the Bengals, it's just always going to be such a good game for the guy that you would project to be the number 1 in the offense. Even Jamar Chase got his in, as if that matters, right? That was up against the fucking Lions. But basically, any wide receiver going up against the Cincinnati Bengals is going to feast. Next up, we move to Jaxson Dart, quarterback of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. 57% rostered over on Sleeper. Quarterback 18 last week in New Orleans. They lose the game 14-26, the worst of the 2 games that Jaxson Dart has started. 26 completions on 40 attempts for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 2 interceptions, 7 rushes for 55 yards, 15 plus points in back-to-back games with a solid rushing floor weekly with 50 plus rushing yards in each game. Dart has top 5 upside in positive matchups. Now, this matchup up against the Eagles does scare me, but they should be trailing from behind because the Eagles just lost to the Broncos, right? A game they definitely should have won realistically. So they're going to take out all that anger on the Giants. So the Giants are going to be down big. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. And I think Jaxson Dart is going to be able to backdoor himself into a top 18 finish at the quarterback position, which would be startable in my opinion. Next up, we got Kendre Miller, who we talked about last week, running back of the New Orleans Saints, going up against the Patriots, 28% rostered over on Sleeper. Running back 34 last week up against the G-Men, winning the game 26-14, 10 rushes for 41 yards, as well as 1 reception on 1 target for 8 yards. Back-to-back games with 10 plus touches. Kendre's snaps have increased greatly as of recently. Week 4, he played 31% of the snaps, and Kamara played 73%. And in Week 5, he played 39%, and Kamara played 56%. This is still Alvin Kamara's backfield. 100%. If Alvin Kamara was to get hurt, knock on wood, Kendre Miller would be very viable. If Alvin Kamara gets traded because the New Orleans Saints are a fucking disaster and they want to get a pick for him for a failing season, then Kendre Miller would be very viable. As of right now, if you are in a real pickle and you need to play Kendre Miller, go ahead. I think that he is startable in that scenario, but based on like normal team composition, unless you're really down bad at running back, you should not have to start him, especially with only 2 teams on bye this week. Next up, we got Kenneth Gainwell, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Cleveland Browns, 58% rostered over on Sleeper. He was the running back 3 in week number 4 because they were on bye last week. That's the last game we could look at in Ireland versus the Minnesota Vikings, winning the game 24-21. He hit the Irish jig on the fucking grave of the Vikings defense in that one. 19 carries for 99 yards, 1 yard short of the 100 marker, and 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions on 6 targets for 35 yards. Jalen Warren is back in practice today on Monday with the knee injury. I am as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, so he could still be out this week, right? Just because he practiced on Monday doesn't mean he's guaranteed to be in, but that's a good indicator that he will be back. So we talked about Kenneth Gainwell last week. Nice game. I get it. He had that nice game last week, or not last week, the week prior, and we talked about in the waiver wire ad last week as kind of fool's gold, right? Because I think when Jalen Warren is back, Jalen Warren is the guy. Kenny G, the Sax man, will still see work, but one strong game shouldn't push Jalen Warren, who has looked very good, out of his running back 1 role. Gainwell is still a great handcuff, though, so he is still definitely addable. Next up, we got Jalen Coker, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Dallas Cowboys at home in Carolina. 14% rostered over on Sleeper. Dave Canales said last Friday that the team will open Jalen Coker's window to return ahead of Week 6. Once he is designated to return, then you get 21 days to be good enough to be activated. And then if you're not activated, you are shut down for the season. But a Week 7 return, in my opinion, seems much more likely than week number 6. I'm not saying it's impossible that he plays this week, but it is much more likely that he returns in week number 7. And when he returns, he's not a guy that I'm looking to just instantly jolt into the lineup and play him. I think that would be foolish to do. But I do think he is a smart bench stash. And based on the play of all of the non-Tedero McMillan wide receivers, he should quickly move up this offense into being the wide receiver 2 in terms of targets. I mean, shout out to Leggett, he scored on the fucking Dolphins, but again, anyone could score on the Dolphins. Last year, he popped off multiple times. Week 8 up against Denver, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 78 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 17. Week 15 up against the Dallas Cowboys, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 110 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver number 12. So he's a solid bench stash, and in some leagues, you might still be able to throw him in your IR spot. Next up, we got Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. Fire the cannons, 15% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Nick, Kendrick Bourne went crazy. Kendrick Bourne went bananas up against the LA Rams. Kendrick Bourne took a dump on the chest of the Rams on Thursday Night Football. I watched it, Nick. It was on Thursday Night Football. Everyone saw it. They win 26-23. Mac Jones looks generational in that game. He looks incredible. And he also hit like the fucking, this like move with his shoulders, straight up aura. And Mac Jones used to be like one of the most auraless quarterbacks in the NFL. 10 receptions on 11 targets for 142 yards. But if you think, Nick, he went so crazy. He had such a good game. Why do you not have him ranked higher? The reason why the pickup is ranked so low is because the second Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall return, his value is in the gutter. Kittle will also be back very soon. If one of Ricky or Juwan misses, you can play him. But if both return, then it wasn't even really worthy of the waiver ad, which is why I have him ranked lower. Because sure, if one of those guys is out, I'm excited to play Kendrick Bourne. But if both of them are in, he's not startable at all. Again, great game, though, last week for him. Final guy here is Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond. Shout out to James Bond, 007. Isaiah Bond, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. 26% rostered over on Sleeper. Back-to-back games with 55% of the snaps and 6+ targets. Wide receiver 41 in week 5 versus the cold like Minnesota Vikings. 2 receptions on 7 targets for 29 yards. Was Dylan Gabriel fantastic in his rookie debut in London? No, but he looked better than Joe Flacco. No Cedric Tillman, so Isaiah Bond is now the wide receiver 2 on the team. This is more of a deep league ad, a dart throw, not a guy that I'm sitting here just shaking, thinking about talking about and thinking about starting him. But if you're in a real pickle, your wide receiver core is dicey, then Isaiah Bond should be on your bench. If you have questions about any players we didn't discuss, you're like, Nick, this player's available in my league that might be owned in like 80+% of the leagues, and you can get them, then we'll discuss it in the comments. If a lot of these players weren't available, and you're maybe in like a deeper league, a 14-team league, a 16-team league, and you have a question about a player that's even deeper down the hole than a guy like Isaiah Bond, then you ask in the comment section. We can have a conversation down there. You could also ask on Patreon to guarantee an answer. $12.50 a month. I have my weekly rankings up on there as well. I answer all questions. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you haven't been enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below like it owes some money. Leave a like on today's video. It'd help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Hope you guys have a great one. As always, good boy.